was eating lunch when the message arrived that changed everything. He sat in the crowded food hall of 7, a massive space station that floated between 3 star systems. The station was neutral ground where dozens of alien species came to trade, argue, and sometimes fight. Worked there as a diplomatic, which meant he solved small problems between merchants and stopped arguments before they became wars. It was not exciting work, was 34 years old and had spent 8 years on the station. He was good at his job, but nobody important knew his name. He was the kind of person who fixed things quietly and never asked for praise. His superiors called him reliable. His colleagues called him boring, did not mind. He liked his simple life. The message came through his personal communicator with a sound he had never heard before. It was not the normal beep of human technology. It was a tone like glass singing, beautiful and strange. Looked at his device and felt his heart stop. The symbol on his screen was one that every spacefaring human recognized. 3 circles of light arranged in a triangle. The mark of the. They were the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. Their empire covered 1,000 star systems. Their technology was so advanced that it looked like magic. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. But for the last 300 years they had been silent. They did not trade. They did not attend galactic meetings. They did not speak to anyone. Some people believed they had died out. Others thought they were planning something terrible. The truth was that nobody knew. They kept their secrets. Opened the message with shaking hands. The words were simple and written in perfect human language. The sovereign requests the presence of the human called. He will come alone. A vessel awaits. Read the message 3 times. He checked the sender verification. It was real. It was actually real. The sovereign was Thessaly, the eternal queen of the. She had ruled her people for over 2,000 years. She had not granted an audience to any outsider in 3 centuries. Kings and presidents and galactic leaders had begged for even a moment of her time. She had refused them all. And now she was asking for a nobody, a man who spent his days settling trade disputes about shipping containers. Stood up so fast that he knocked over his drink. The liquid spread across the table, but he did not notice. He walked out of the food hall in a daze. His mind was spinning with questions. Why him? What had he done? Was this some kind of mistake? Within an hour, the news had spread across the entire station. A ship had arrived. It was the first time their vessels had been seen outside their borders in living memory. The ship hung in space near the station like a sculpture made of living crystal. Light moved through it in patterns that hurt to watch for too long. Found himself standing in the station commander's office. Ambassador Wei, the highest-ranking human diplomat in the sector, was there. So were representatives from 5 other species. They were all staring at like he had grown a second head. "This must be a trick," said the ambassador. There were tall creatures with 4 arms and skin like blue leather. They do not simply summon unknown humans. There must be an error. "There is no error," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Everyone turned. A figure stood in the doorway that had not been there a moment before. It was a. Had never seen one in person. The alien was tall and thin, almost 8 feet in height. Its body seemed to be made of pale flesh that was slightly transparent, and light moved beneath its skin like slow lightning. Its face was almost human, but too perfect, too still. Its eyes were pools of soft gold. "The sovereign's invitation is genuine," they said. Its voice was calm and musical. "Will come with me now. He will come alone. This is not a request." Ambassador Wei stepped forward. "With respect, we need more information. Why does your sovereign want to meet with Commander? What is the purpose of this meeting?" They turned its golden eyes to the ambassador. "The purpose is not your concern. The sovereign's reasons are her own. She has waited long enough." "Waited?" heard himself say. "What do you mean, waited?" They looked at him for a long moment. Felt like the alien was seeing through him. reading every secret thought he had ever had. "You will understand soon," the said. "Come." Looked at Ambassador Wei. The older man's face was pale. "I cannot order you to go," he said quietly, "but I cannot protect you if you do. We have no power against no one does." Thought about his life, his small apartment on the station, his boring job, his empty evenings. He thought about all the times he had wondered if there was more to existence than filling out reports and eating lunch alone. "I'll go," he said. The walk to the docking bay was the longest of his life. Crowds had gathered to watch. Humans, aliens, merchants, soldiers, they all stared as he followed through the corridors. Some people called out questions. Others took pictures, ignored them all. His feet moved on their own, carrying him toward a destiny he did not understand. The ship was even more beautiful up close. Its hull shifted and changed as watched, forming patterns that seemed almost alive. A door opened in its side, though had not seen any door before. The opening simply appeared, as if the crystal had decided to let them in. Inside, the ship was impossible. The walls were transparent, showing the stars outside but also showing other things, other places. Saw forests of purple trees. He saw cities floating on clouds. He saw a sun that was 3 colors at once. The images flickered and changed like dreams. "Do not be afraid," the said. "The journey is not long." Wanted to ask 100 questions. Where were they going? What did the queen want? Why had she chosen him? But his voice would not work. He could only stand and watch as the ship began to move, carrying him away from everything he had ever known. As 7 shrank to a point of light behind them, the spoke one last time. "She has waited 300 years for this meeting," it said. "You should feel honored. You are about to learn a truth that your entire species has forgotten." Stared out at the passing stars, and wondered what truth could possibly be worth 3 centuries of waiting. The journey took 3 days, or at least thought it did. Time felt strange on the ship. Sometimes he would blink and hours would pass. Other times, a single minute seemed to stretch forever. He slept in a room that the ship created for him, a small space with a bed that was softer than anything he had ever felt. Food appeared when he was hungry. Water appeared when he was thirsty. He never saw anyone bring these things. They were simply there when he needed them. On the 3rd day, the ship arrived at Prime. Had heard stories about but no story could have prepared him for the truth. The planet glowed. Its surface was covered with crystal formations that caught the light of 3 suns and scattered it in every direction. Vast cities floated in the upper atmosphere, connected by bridges of solid light. Below them, oceans of liquid starlight moved in slow, peaceful waves. It was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. It was also terrifying. The ship descended toward the largest floating city, pressed his hands against the transparent wall and watched as towers of crystal passed by on either side. Each tower was different. Some were tall and thin like needles. Others were wide and flat like platforms. All of them were filled with going about their daily lives. They stopped to watch as the ship passed. Thousands of golden eyes turned toward. He felt exposed, like a specimen under a microscope. These beings were ancient beyond measure. Their civilization had risen and fallen and risen again while humanity was still learning to walk upright. And now one of them, the most important one, wanted to speak with him. The ship landed on a platform of white crystal, followed his escort out into the open air. The atmosphere was breathable, though it tasted faintly sweet, like honey mixed with something he could not name. The gravity was lighter than Earth, and each step felt like floating. They walked through streets that had no ground. The path simply appeared beneath his feet as he moved, solid crystal forming from nothing and disappearing behind him. Others watched from doorways and windows. None of them spoke. The silence was absolute. Finally, they reached the palace. It was not a building in any way understood. It was more like a frozen explosion, a moment of violent beauty captured and held forever. Crystal spires shot outward in every direction, catching and bending light until the whole structure seemed to be on fire with color. At its center was a darkness that was somehow also bright, a contradiction that made his head hurt to look at. "The throne room," his escort said. "You will enter alone." Swallowed, what do I say to her? How do I show respect? "Speak the truth," they said. "The sovereign has no patience for lies. As for respect, she will judge your heart, not your words." The doors opened. They were not really doors realized. The crystals simply parted, creating a passage that had not existed before. He stepped through before his courage could fail him. The throne room was impossible. It extended in every direction further than could see. The ceiling was not a ceiling but an open window into space itself. Stars burned overhead, closer than they should have been, close enough to touch. The floor was a mirror that reflected not its body but something else, shadows and light moving in patterns that suggested meaning he could not understand. And at the center of it all, she waited. Sovereign Thessaly, the Eternal, did not sit on a throne. She floated above one, suspended in a column of soft light that came from nowhere and everywhere. Her body was barely solid. Could see through her in places, could see the stars shining through her chest and shoulders. She was ancient, that much was obvious. But age had not made her weak. It had made her something more than flesh, something closer to pure energy given form. Her eyes opened. They were not gold like the other. They were white, blazing white, like captured suns. She said. Her voice did not come from her mouth. It appeared directly in his mind, warm and cold at the same time, gentle and overwhelming. He fell to his knees without deciding to. His body simply could not remain standing in the presence of such power. "Please," she said, "stand. I did not bring you here to kneel." Forced himself upright. His legs shook, but he stood. "Your Majesty," he managed to say, "I don't understand why I'm here." "No," she agreed. "You do not. That is why I must show you." She made a gesture and the room changed. The stars overhead shifted, showing a different sky, a different time. Watched as the scene around him transformed into something from the past. 300 years ago, the Queen said, my people faced extinction. A force we call the Hollow had reached our borders. It consumed everything it touched, planets, stars, entire civilizations. We fought it with every weapon we had. We failed. We prepared to die. Watched the memory play out around him. He saw ships burning. He saw worlds crumbling to dust. He saw the Hollow itself, a darkness that moved like a living thing, swallowing light and life wherever it went. The other species of the galaxy abandoned us, the Queen continued. They calculated their odds of survival. They decided that helping us was too dangerous. They left us to our fate. Her voice carried no anger, only a vast sadness. But then, she said, something unexpected happened. A small ship appeared in our space. A human ship. A colony vessel that had been lost for centuries, its crew dead from a system failure, all except one man. The scene shifted again. Saw a battered human spacecraft, ancient even by the standards of that era. It drifted among the wreckage of a fleet, tiny and fragile, a minnow among whales. That man woke from cryogenic sleep to find himself in the middle of an apocalypse, the Queen said. By all logic, he should have fled. He should have turned his ship around and escaped while the Hollow was distracted. That is what any rational being would do. She paused. Her white eyes burned into soul. But he did not flee. He stayed. And that man's name was Thomas. He was your ancestor, and what he did next changed everything. Stared at the ancient ship floating in the memory. His ancestor. His blood. A man lost in time who had stumbled into an alien apocalypse 300 years ago. What did he do? Whispered. The Queen smiled. It was the first emotion she had shown, and it transformed her face from something terrifying into something almost human. He saved us all, she said, and now finally I can repay that debt. The Queen raised her hand and the memory around them grew sharper. Was no longer just watching the past. He was inside it, feeling it, living it as if he were there himself. He found himself standing on the bridge of the old colony ship. The controls were primitive by modern standards, covered with buttons and switches that no current spacecraft would use. Warning lights flashed red across every panel. The ship was damaged, barely functional, held together by emergency repairs and desperate hope. And sitting in the pilot's chair was Thomas. Stared at his ancestor. The resemblance was striking. They had the same dark hair, the same strong jaw, the same quiet intensity in their eyes. But Thomas looked tired. Dark circles marked his face. His hands trembled slightly as they moved across the controls. He had been awake for 17 days when this memory was recorded, the Queen's voice said. He had not slept. He could not sleep. He was studying the hollow, trying to understand it while my people died around him. The scene shifted. Thomas stood at a makeshift workstation, surrounded by data screens showing alien symbols he should not have been able to read. But somehow he was reading them. He was learning. They shared everything with him, the Queen explained. All our research on the hollow, all our failed attempts to destroy it. We did not expect him to find anything. He was human, young, primitive by our standards. We shared the information because we had nothing left to lose. Watched as Thomas worked through calculation after calculation. His ancestor was not a soldier or a scientist. He was a systems engineer, trained to fix broken machines on colony worlds. But he attacked the problem with a focus that was almost frightening. He found something, said, didn't he? Yes, the Queen's voice carried a note of wonder. Something we had missed, something that changed everything. The memory showed Thomas running through the damaged corridors of his ship. He burst onto the bridge and began sending a message on frequencies. The hollow was not truly alive, the Queen said. It was a weapon created billions of years ago by a civilization that no longer exists, a self-sustaining system designed to eliminate threats to its creators. It analyzed every enemy. It predicted every attack. It adapted to every strategy. That is why we could not defeat it. Thomas's message appeared in the memory, translated into words could understand. It can't predict what it can't understand, Thomas had written. It's based on logic, on rational behavior. Every species it has ever faced has acted according to self-preservation. That's its baseline. That's how it predicts what you'll do next. He was right, the Queen said. The hollow had consumed 1,000 civilizations across millions of years. Every single one had tried to fight logically, strategically. And the hollow had learned from each of them, becoming better and better at predicting rational behavior. But humans aren't always rational, said quietly. No, the Queen agreed. You are not, and Thomas proved it in the most spectacular way possible. The memory shifted one final time, stood in space itself, floating among the wreckage of a great battle. Warships burned around him. The hollow was visible in the distance, a wall of darkness that swallowed stars. And flying toward it, impossibly small against the infinite black, was Thomas' colony ship. He told no one what he was planning, the Queen said. He knew we would try to stop him. He knew we would call his plan insane, because it was insane. By every measure of logic and reason, what he did should not have worked. Watched as the tiny ship accelerated toward the hollow. It was broadcasting on every frequency, filling space with signals. But they were not weapons or codes or tactical data. It was music. A simple melody played across the void. A lullaby, soft and gentle, sung in a language the hollow had never encountered. A song that Thomas' grandmother used to sing to him when he was a child. The hollow tried to analyze the broadcast, the Queen said. It tried to understand the purpose, the strategy behind sending music toward a weapon of annihilation. It could not. For the first time in millions of years, it encountered something that made no sense. The darkness hesitated, saw it actually pause, its endless advance stopping for just a moment as it tried to process the impossible. 3 seconds, the Queen said. That was all the time his confusion gave us. 3 seconds of hesitation. Thomas' ship reached the center of the hollow, and then it detonated. The explosion was nuclear, primitive, the kind of weapon humanity had used against itself centuries ago. Against a normal enemy, it would have done nothing. But the hollow was not normal. It was a system designed to absorb and redirect energy, to feed on attack and grow stronger. It was not designed to handle 3 seconds of confusion, followed by an attack it had not predicted. The darkness shattered. The hollow broke apart, its ancient systems cascading into failure as the unexpected assault disrupted connections that had held stable for billions of years. Fragments scattered across space, burning out like dying embers. Thomas died in the heart of his explosion. He died singing his grandmother's lullaby. The memory faded, found himself back in the throne room, tears streaming down his face. He had felt his ancestors' fear, his determination, his absolute refusal to let others die when he could do something, anything, to save them. He knew he would not survive, the Queen said softly. He knew he was flying into death, and he did it anyway because he could not stand by while others suffered. That is not rational, that is not logical. It is something greater than logic. Why didn't anyone know? Asked. His voice was rough with emotion. Why isn't he in our history books? Pride, the Queen admitted. My pride, the pride of my people. We were the ancient ones, the wise ones, the powerful ones. And we had been saved by a single human with a broken ship and an old song. We could not accept it, so we buried the truth. We told no one. And humanity never knew what one of their own had done. She floated closer too. Her white eyes were gentle now, almost motherly. I have carried this shame for 300 years, she said. I have waited for the right moment to repay the debt we owe. And now that moment has come because humanity is going to need help very soon. Help that I can finally give. What do you mean? Asked. What's going to happen? The Queen's expression grew dark. The hollow was not alone, she said, and something far worse is waking up. The Queen led through corridors of living crystal to a vast chamber buried deep beneath the palace. The walls here pulsed with soft light, and the air hummed with energy that made skin tingle. This was the Hall of Legacies, she explained, where they kept their most sacred knowledge. Displays lined every surface. Some showed star maps marked with ancient symbols. Others contained devices that could not begin to understand. One entire wall was dedicated to a single image, the darkness of the hollow, frozen at the moment of its destruction, with Thomas' tiny ship visible at its heart. We built this memorial the day after he saved us, the Queen said. No one outside this room has ever seen it, but every leader for 300 years has come here to remember, to understand what we owe. Stood before the image of his ancestor. The man looked so ordinary, just a tired human in an old ship, facing something that should have been impossible to defeat. You said something worse is coming, said. What did you mean? The Queen gestured, and a new display appeared in the air between them. It showed a map of the galaxy, with familiar stars marked in soft blue light. But beyond the edge of the galaxy, in the void between island universes, something else was marked in deep red. The civilization that created the hollow did not make only one weapon, the Queen said. They built many, each designed for different purposes. The hollow was meant to eliminate emerging threats. It was a sword. But they also built a shield, a device meant to protect their borders from outside invasion. The silence guessed. Yes, that is what we call it. The silence is larger than the hollow was, more sophisticated, more dangerous. And for billions of years it has slept in the space between galaxies, waiting for something to wake it. Something woke it up. Humanity did. The Queen's voice held no accusation, only sad truth. Your species has been broadcasting signals into space for centuries. Radio waves, television programs, messages meant for any listening ears. Most of those signals fade into nothing, but some of them reached the void, some of them reached the silence. Felt cold, we woke it up by accident. The silence is designed to respond to intelligent signals from outside the galaxy. Your broadcasts convinced it that a threat exists. Now it is moving, slowly but steadily. Within 50 years, it will reach the outer edges of inhabited space. Within 100 years, it will arrive at the galactic core. Can't we stop it? Can't we do what Thomas did? No, the Queen's voice was firm. The silence learned from the Hollow's destruction. It has been analyzing the data for 3 centuries. It knows about irrational behavior now. It has adapted. The same trick will not work twice. Felt despair rising in his chest. Humanity had accidentally awakened something that would destroy the entire galaxy, and there was no way to stop it. Then why did you bring me here? He asked. Why tell me this if there's no hope? The Queen smiled. It was a strange expression on her ancient face, warm and almost proud. I did not say there was no hope, she said. I said the same trick will not work twice, but humanity has never been a species of one trick. Your people are creative, stubborn, surprisingly resourceful. Given time and tools, you might find a new way. She raised her hand, and the displays around them changed. They now showed technology beyond anything had ever seen. Ships that moved faster than light itself. Weapons that could shatter moons. Medical devices that could extend human life for centuries. Agricultural systems that could turn dead worlds into gardens. This is everything, the Queen said. The full knowledge of the technology that took us millions of years to develop. I am offering it to humanity freely, without conditions, without debt. Stared at the displays. His mind could not process what he was seeing. This was not a gift. It was the transformation of an entire species. Humanity would go from being a minor spacefaring civilization to being equals with the oldest powers in the galaxy. Why, he asked, why would you give us this? Because your ancestor gave us everything without asking for anything in return, the Queen said. He did not negotiate. He did not demand payment. He simply saw that others needed help and he helped them. He died helping them. This is how to repay our debts. The other species won't accept this, said. His diplomatic training was finally kicking in, forcing him to think past the shock. The Galactic Concord has rules about technology sharing. They'll see this as a violation. They might even go to war over it. Let them complain, the Queen said. Her voice carried a hint of old anger. The Concord abandoned us when we faced the Hollow. They calculated their odds and decided we were not worth saving. They do not get to dictate how I repay the species that actually helped us. She floated closer too, her white eyes burning with intensity. This choice is not mine to make, she said. I am offering this gift to you because you carry Thomas' blood. You must decide whether to accept it on behalf of your people. You must decide whether humanity is ready. Thought about Earth, about the human colonies scattered across 100 worlds, about the children who would grow up never knowing the danger approaching from between the galaxies. He thought about his ancestor, flying into darkness with nothing but a broken ship and an old song. If I say no, said slowly, what happens? Then I will offer this gift to no one else. The knowledge will stay with and humanity will face the silence alone, with whatever technology you can develop in 50 years. And if I say yes, then everything changes. Your species becomes something new, something powerful, something capable of standing against the darkness. The Queen paused. But also something that will have enemies. Some will hate you for rising so quickly. Some will fear what you might become. Closed his eyes. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a physical force. He was nobody, a minor diplomat, a man who had spent his life avoiding attention, and now the fate of his entire species rested on his answer. He thought about Thomas again. About a man who had every reason to run and chose to stay instead. about irrational courage and impossible sacrifice. My ancestor didn't hesitate, said finally. He saw what needed to be done and he did it. He didn't calculate odds or worry about consequences. He just acted. He opened his eyes and met the Queen's blazing gaze. Yes, he said, I accept. On behalf of humanity, I accept your gift. The Queen nodded slowly. Something like satisfaction crossed her ancient features. Then let us change the galaxy together, she said, and let us hope that humanity's fire burns bright enough to push back the silence when it comes. 3 weeks after left Seven as a nobody, he returned as something else entirely. The galaxy had already begun to change. Technology ships had appeared at human colonies across known space. They delivered data cores containing knowledge beyond imagination. Engineers and scientists worked day and night to understand the gifts they had been given. New factories rose on Earth and Mars and a dozen other worlds, building things that humanity had only dreamed about. The Galactic Concord was furious. Emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors screamed accusations at each other. 3 species threatened to declare war on humanity for upsetting the natural order. 2 others from the Concord entirely, refusing to participate in any organization that allowed such favoritism. But they did not care about their anger. The Queen had spoken and her word was final. Humanity had been chosen. The reasons were no one else's business. Stepped off the ship at 7 to find a crowd of thousands waiting for him. Humans mostly, but also aliens from a dozen species. Some cheered. Some shouted questions. Some simply stared in silence, trying to understand how one man had changed everything. Ambassador Wei pushed through the crowd to reach him. The older man looked like he had not slept in weeks. His eyes were red and his hands trembled. "What happened?" he demanded. "What did you do? What did you promise them?" "I didn't promise anything," said. "They gave us a gift freely, without conditions." "Nothing is free. There's always a price." Thought about Thomas flying into the hollow, about a lullaby echoing across space in the last moments before nuclear fire. "The price was paid 300 years ago," he said. "We're only now learning about it." The story of Thomas was released to the public 1 week later. Told it himself, standing in the great assembly hall of the United Earth government. He showed them the Queen's memories, the same vision she had shared with him. Politicians and generals and ordinary citizens watched as a forgotten ancestor flew to his death to save an alien species that humanity had never even met. The reaction was overwhelming. Within days, Thomas' name was known on every human world. Songs were written about him. Statues were planned. Children grew up hearing about the man who had saved them with nothing but courage and an old lullaby. But more importantly, people began to understand something about themselves. Humanity had always wondered where they fit in the galaxy. They were young compared to other species, weak compared to the ancient powers. They had often felt like visitors in a universe that did not quite belong to them. Now they knew the truth. Humanity belonged because they had earned their place, not through conquest or politics, but through the simple act of helping others when no one else would. The story spread beyond human space. Other species heard about Thomas and what he had done. Some dismissed it as propaganda, others were curious, a few were moved. The ambassador, the same one who had called summons a trick, requested a private meeting. He sat across from in a small conference room and spoke in a voice that shook. "I need to know if the story is true," he said. "My people abandoned during the Hollow Crisis. We calculated that helping them would only delay our own destruction. We let them die. They survived anyway," said. "Because of one human." The 4 hands clenched and unclenched. One man who had no logical reason to stay. One man who flew into death because he could not stand by while others suffered. "Yes. We would not have done that. No would have made that choice. We are too rational, too concerned with survival." The ambassador looked at with something like wonder. Is that what makes humans different, that you are capable of being irrational? Thought about the question for a long time. I think it's simpler than that, he finally said. We just don't like to see others hurting, even when helping them doesn't make sense, even when it costs us everything. We help anyway. The ambassador left the meeting in silence, but 1 month later his government announced that they would stand with humanity against any threat from the void. 2 other species followed within the week, then 3 more, then a dozen. The coalition against the silence was forming, and humanity stood at its center. Did not lead the coalition. He was still not a soldier or a general or a great statesman, but he became something else, a symbol, the descendant of Thomas, the man who had accepted the gift and brought humanity into a new era. He spent his days traveling between worlds, telling his ancestors' story, building bridges between species that had been enemies for centuries. It was exhausting work, but it mattered. Every alliance strengthened humanity's position. Every friendship made the galaxy a little more united against the coming darkness. On the anniversary of his meeting with the Queen, returned to Earth, he took a shuttle to Luna, to the memorial that had been built for Thomas. The structure was simple, a pillar of white stone with his ancestor's name carved into it, surrounded by a garden of flowers from every human colony world. Stood before the memorial alone, the crowd had dispersed, the cameras had gone away. It was just him and the stone and the distant stars. He pulled out the data crystal the Queen had given him before he left Prime. It contained one thing, the recording of Thomas' final transmission, the lullaby he had broadcast as he flew into the hollow. Activated it. The music was soft and simple, a melody that had been sung by mothers to children for generations, passed down through families without anyone knowing its significance. It was the sound of comfort, of safety, of love that asked nothing in return. It was the sound of humanity. Listened until the song ended. Then he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, the silence was moving. It was coming for everything humanity had built, everything they had become. But humanity was not the same species it had been 50 years ago. They had technology now. They had allies. They had the memory of what one ordinary man could do when he refused to give up. "We don't calculate odds," said quietly. He was speaking to his ancestor, to the Queen, to the vast darkness between the stars. "We never have. We see someone who needs help and we help them. That's who we are." He placed his hand on the cold stone of the memorial. "The silence is coming," he continued. "It thinks it knows how to predict us. It thinks it's adapted to our irrationality, but it doesn't understand what we really are. It doesn't know that we'll do the impossible thing, the crazy thing, the thing that makes no logical sense, just because it's the right thing to do." The stars burned above him, cold and distant and full of danger, but also full of possibility. "We're coming for you," whispered to the darkness, "and we're bringing the lullaby." He turned and walked away from the memorial, toward the shuttle that would carry him back to his work. There was so much left to do, alliances to build, technologies to master, a galaxy to prepare for war. But for the first time since his journey began, felt something like hope. Humanity had been given a second chance. They had been given the tools to survive, and they had been reminded of what they truly were, a species that helped others, no matter the cost, no matter the odds, no matter how irrational it seemed. The silence was coming, but humanity would be ready. And somewhere in the void, the darkness would learn what Thomas had taught the Hollow 300 years ago. Never underestimate a species that refuses to give up.